Hi and welcome to another episode of eCom at One, and today's guest is Martin Neill. Now Martin's the CEO and founder of AirPOS or AirPOS, who have a variety of solutions for e-commerce stores and EPOS systems. How you doing, Martin? You okay?
Pretty good, Richard. Pretty good, surviving lockdown.
Yeah, so
every day. So yeah,
you're coming from all the way from Northern Ireland.
we are indeed. We're in relatively sunny Belfast.
It looks very bright there today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a curious.
They were in for a couple of days of heat wave, don't they? I think is the latest. So fingers crossed.
Someone said hotter than the Caribbean at the weekend. So let's see.
That's good because we won't be going there for a while, I don't think.
No, definitely not.
So I thought it'd be good to kick off, Martin, with a bit of history, really, sort of your career history, bring us up to date with where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a multifaceted career person, I guess. I've never had a specialty particularly. Just kind of done stuff, you know. If I'm ever asked to give a talk or a presentation on careers, it's like, yeah, you just do stuff. I kind of suspect that everyone just does stuff. I listen to people who plan and go, yeah, you're just going to do stuff, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know? So
it won't be the thing, but
yeah, I've done stuff in the music industry. I've done stuff in broadcasting, done stuff in journalism, and it all sort of led me at every point into tech. So every touch point that I had in the music industry was becoming digital. Everything in broadcasting was becoming digital, websites, etc., etc. So always kind of fascinated by digital transition, if you like. Probably peaked by I did get fired because of Napster. Well, I got fired because of what I said to my boss, but it was kind of led by Napster. I worked at a record label. You'll have heard of Snow Patrol. They were kicking around the edges of this record label called Brightstar.
Of course, yeah.
And Napster launched, and I was the tech guy on staff, if you like. And I came in and made the wild suggestion that we should just start giving the music away and get fired on the spot. But I really did mean it, and I really had thought it through. I think our boss had assumed that we had somehow put all the music on Napster. He didn't really understand that wasn't us, that was fans of the label. So yeah, just kind of interesting things like that, and watching industries get disrupted. And then in around 2008, I was coming out of a project that we had done with the guys from Snow Patrol called the OEM Music Centre in Belfast. Which was effectively a charity to help young people get into the music industry and get them off the streets, as they say, etc. You know, so yeah, I was coming out of that, and we set up Belfast's first tech accelerator, stroke incubator, stroke co-working space in a really old warehouse building in the centre of Belfast that we were effectively given. That the building had half a roof, which was why the project failed in the end. And we were working as e-commerce consultants at that point, pretty much making e-commerce stores for small retailers mostly, but also working with some bigger brands like Budweiser and various other guys along the way. So a real interesting time, but kept seeing the problem over and over again of a lack of joined up thinking on the retailer's end, and also on our end. We were part of the problem. So effectively, we went into a small shop that had whatever internal processes it had at that point. We bolted on an e-commerce store, which caused them all sorts of issues, financial sorts of issues in terms of inventory. We never really thought about that. That wasn't our job. And off we went into the night. And if they sold some things, great. If they didn't sell some things, well, it wasn't really our issue. AirPOS came from the idea that a friend of mine had been given a record shop. And when I say given a record shop, genuinely just been handed the keys in the pub and went and opened it up the next day. And it had unique vinyl records. So he wanted to sell online. He needed to sell online. The idea was to try to save this old record shop called Backbeat in the centre of Belfast. And we went looking for an inventory system that could allow him to sell unique items online, but make sure that they wouldn't be sold in the shop. And there wasn't one on the earth. So I naively, in hindsight, went, well, why don't we just make one then? And that's how AirPOS was born. So AirPOS was genuinely the world's first cloud POS, and genuinely the world's first cloud EPOS and e-commerce system, long before Shopify ever considered a POS, and a little bit ahead of Square as well.
Okay. So for those that are listening in that are not quite sure what a sort of EPOS system is in terms of helping an e-commerce store, how would you explain that?
So if our software developers were on this call and I said this, I'd be in trouble. I have always seen an EPOS as somewhat of a glorified calculator in some ways, and an essential tool for retail. I think if you're not on EPOS at this point, I wonder why, because it's so affordable for all. In the days that we came into this in 2009, we were getting quotes from EPOS companies that were just surreal. I mean, £10,000 for a startup retailer who, simply didn't have the cash, and really didn't understand what it was that they were buying a lot of the time. So it's all changed significantly. I mean, you can get EPOS accounting and CRM, all of these things that were well beyond the reach of a small retailer 10 years ago. All of that for less than £100 a month. In many cases. So I think EPOS, assuming that you've kept up with any times whatsoever, and you're not stuck in the 90s, and you've got an EPOS solution. Well, an EPOS solution is a way of managing your financial records, your sales, taking card payments. But when it gets a little bit more advanced and gets further up the food chain, it's also an inventory platform. You can feed into e-commerce and feed into ordering and supply chains and all.
So be fair to say it sort of sits in the middle of the business and it controls off, at the full scale, the inventory, the stock, the CRM, the financials, and integrates everything at maybe a location or 10, but also syncs everything with your e-commerce as well. So you have your retail stores and your e-commerce, bringing it all together rather than, Jim, have we got any of them left in the warehouse? Let me go and check, sort of thing. Pretty much, yeah. Who sold that last packet of whatever? Like the old days.
Looking back, I think I mentioned naively, we thought we'll just build an EPOS solution, but I don't think we really understood the complexity of an EPOS solution at that point, and also the essential, the real critical nature of it, because it is critical. It is the heartbeat of a shop, effectively. And iPads really, I could claim all sorts of things like we were first, and what a wonderful idea. What really changed the industry was the iPad. It was really Apple. And the idea of tablets as
the idea is they can walk around the store with everything in their iPad, on their iPad, sort of thing. So am I right in thinking then a retailer e-commerce person listening in that wants to get started, I think obviously we've got different listeners that are doing several £1,000s a week to millions of pounds a week. Somebody that's maybe looking to start out, you've got a lot of options out there. When you say, there's a CRM, there's an inventory, there's a warehousing, there's this. What would be a good start point for, say, a small retailer or small e-commerce store with an EPOS system?
Well, accepting that you've absolutely got to take card payments, and I think everyone recognises that now. That wasn't true 5 years ago. People were still debating whether or not to do card payments. I think with contactless payments, you've got to be taking cards. And I think I don't know if we want this to be dated as a COVID podcast, but
we can touch on all that, no problem.
I think out the other side of COVID, contactless payments and digital economy is going to be a real heightened debate. So I think, number one is you've got to serve the customer best, really. So you've got to offer them the payment solutions that they want, be that Apple Pay, be that, contactless cards, be that, chip and pin. You've just got to have that. So, from those basics, you've got to have records for your Making Tax Digital as well, even though it's kicked the ball down the road for a year. It's common. And have that fed into your accountancy platform, things like Xero or World Changers. I mean, for me, I would be looking at a budget, Richard, that said I would build it in at somewhere between 100, 150 a month, and I would go looking for a suite of solutions that allowed me to take sales, manage my accounts, take payments, and also sell online for that.
Sort of £150 mark a month will be a good more than a good start point where you're going to get, like you say, accounting, warehousing, contactless payments all integrated in one. And in terms of sort of integrations with e-commerce store platforms, so I think obviously there's a lot of platforms out there, but there's sort of 2 or 3 that sort of Shopify, Magento, obviously Magento 2 more so, some of the newer players coming into the market like Shopware, people like that. Mm-hmm. So integrations wise, that's all sort of standard stuff, I would guess.
It is and it isn't. So you've got to kind of... I'm not a fan of the word integration. I think integration has slipped too easily into everyone's lexicon with a lack of understanding of what integration actually means. You know, so there's this idea that it's somehow this alchemy, that this thing can talk to this thing. Well, it ain't that simple ever. You know, so you take Shopify, for example. Now, we're actually working on a Shopify integration as we speak. We haven't done up until now.
Yeah.
We wanted to focus on our own platform. Our own platform's good for your startup retailer, but we're not competing with a Shopify just yet. Pretending that we're that far along. And they're 16 years in, so they're a little bit further down the road than us. But something like a Shopify, because it came from the world of e-commerce and it was an e-commerce platform first, it's not very usable in a multi-store.
On a retail side more,
Yeah, you know, so you do have your limitations and you do still have your roadblocks. And I think people are working their way through those. You know, Shopify had to change its thinking from an e-commerce system into a system that also serviced not just one outlet, because it was always just one outlet and it was e-commerce.
Yeah.
You've got your ePOS solutions now that have to kind of fall in line with that. And we suffer from that a little bit ourselves. Now, I think we're lucky in that we were born as a multi-channel solution. We were EPOS and e-commerce from the start, so we've always had that consideration. But we're much, much smaller. We can't raise the sort of venture rounds that you can, even in Canada, in Northern Ireland. So Shopify raising their, I think it's whispered, I think it's a billion.
Well, Shopify, since lockdown, since the initial drop of a lot of shares in every industry from lockdown, I've been tracking Shopify, and Shopify yesterday was up 110% their share value from about 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, it says it all.
I think about a year ago it was like $300 per share. Now it's about $740 yesterday. And if you got it in the drop in the sort of mid-March, when the world went crazy for about a week, we're not sure what's going on. You'd have done more 110% in 8 weeks on the Shopify shares.
that to me is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because for me, e-commerce has always been, I think the difference between, if we're talking about new retailers born in this era or born prior to this era, COVID's a bit curious for everyone. There's too many people opening shops, but they may be. You know, if you're born in the last 5 years, you should be thinking multi-channel out of the box, really. Yeah. You know, your business should be selling online from day one. And I think the change is going to be, it took us a long time to recognize what the problem with e-commerce was for small retailers. You know, always thought it was a technical hurdle, you know, because people are afraid of new things, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, what I realized just through talking to lots and lots of them over time about it is it's a cultural change, that they fear that they're going to damage their main business that works by introducing this new thing. You know, so I'll give you an example. A running shop that has customers that come in, they're expert in this. At distance, are they still as expert when they can't talk to people face to face? Well, I would argue yes, absolutely, 100%. And you can also talk to people far wider than your local environment as well. But it's that cultural change that seems to be the stumbling block. Now, out the other side of COVID-19, I think that attitude will change significantly.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm seeing, you know, where we are, there's quite a lot of, you know, smaller local, well, I say smaller, but more localized firms that are, you know, they're very reliant on that local footfall. You know, so a garden centre, for example, very successful. You know, we've got to know the family quite well. You know, fairly huge operation, I would say, for a local business. You know, very successful, but they've got no website to take orders, and obviously lockdown. And then they open up Facebook saying, "Yeah, we're gonna start doing deliveries." Boom! They get 1,000 orders on direct message. It's like impossible, you know. They're running around like, you know, just trying to manually take that payment, manually then ring the customer and say, "Hey, how many daffodils was it?" or whatever you can imagine. And I went to pick something up, and the chaos that was there. You know, I felt so sorry for the guy. You know, I mean, I've got to know him quite well. Such a lovely family, but they're absolutely. You know, I said to him, you know, "Dude, what's going on with the website?" "Oh yeah, we really need to sort that out." I'm like, "No." So I've introduced him to, obviously we've got a few sort of development partners that we recommend. So I've introduced him to one of those, and I think.
I hope you recommended an inventory integration for him, Richard, because if you didn't, he's going to have a big problem.
Well, yeah, he's got a few. He's got quite a. Yeah, he's got a lot of things to solve. But they're back open now, so you can. But they've got that sort of. That type of business, like a lot of businesses that have got that seasonal element to them. A lot of e-commerce stores, quite often you've got that Christmas element or summer element, definitely the sort of Black Friday, Christmas element. Yep. In that instance, you've got that sort of spring 6 weeks, even 5 weeks, I think, where first sign of the sun, and then it's like, right, everyone's sorting the garden out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think there's quite a few things there, isn't there? So in terms of the guys listening in, there's quite a I think gone are the days is what you're saying of maybe having to spend 10, 20, 30 grand to get an implemenation.
Those days are not coming back. They're gone.
Yeah, which is great. So that opens it up to everybody, that 150 quid, mark, obviously, that's quite a variable thing, but, that sort of low amount, which when you look at what some of those integrations can do, you're going to save that straight away just by, the whole tax element, the accountancy fees that you're not spending on, to 2 days manual work, integrating something from an Excel sheet or.
Oh, 100%. And you know what? It puts your destiny in your own hands to a large degree. What I love about being an owner of AirPOS is I am involved in every single little thing, but not in a silly way, I hope.
Yeah.
I know where all the bodies are buried. There is no part of our business.
Yeah.
No part of our business where the exposure exists where I have no idea what's going on. And that's really tools. That's not me being brilliant or anything like that. That's just really having a set of tools at your hand. And really, this is the thing for me. And everyone wants to view the world and think everyone thinks like them, right? That's how we operate. If retailers start to think like tech businesses the way Amazon does, for example, then if you think of that garden center and the seasonality of that garden center, there's no reason that garden center can't sell X amount of other things that are related throughout the year, and do it at a gross margin that is extraordinary because it could be selling things at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
That's
well, this is the thing. We also have garden centres that work with us all year round. So I can see the complete contrast of somebody doing not it wasn't on their radar to somebody that's their business from day one, has been an e-commerce store 24/7, 365, selling different seasonal products throughout the year. So from your side, you're seeing, obviously you've got your business, which is supplying it's like a B2B e-commerce business in effect. But then your customers, obviously a whole array of e-commerce stores and retailers. Yeah. What sort of is there any sort of, over this last couple of months during lockdown, is there any sort of strategies, things that you've seen e-commerce stores doing that's really just been a sort of standout strategy? I hate to use the word pivot and things like that, but
I think they are pivots. I think they're genuinely pivots. Pivots become a buzzword, but these are genuine pivots. Yeah. It'll surprise no one to find that England is selling lots and lots of alcohol online at this point. That's what we have seen. England, Ireland, alcohol sales and people quickly, and pivoting is the word, because they weren't selling online before, using our platform to really, really quickly launch an e-commerce platform and start selling. Now, the difference in strategy, and this is really interesting, again, me thinking that the world should see everything the way I do, I had always assumed that retailers would like to sell as widely as possible. In this case, it's all hyperlocal stuff, all of it. It's like they want to sell to certain postcodes. So our biggest request at this point would be, I don't want to sell to everyone. I want to sell to a very, very defined set of people. And that's new. That I haven't really seen that before. I've seen it in some cases with heavy goods and guys selling tractors. I remember you're not going to ship a tractor, it turns out.
Okay, maybe.
But people will buy them online. I was stunned at that. But so that hyper local thing is definitely the new world, and that's what now. Whether that maintains out the other side of the crisis is a question. I think it will. I think it will, because you're going to have customers. The whole thing's about the customer expectation anyway. So the guys who have been buying online in this period, they're going to expect to be able to do that out the other side.
Yeah. Okay, so you've seen, obviously, you'd say about 10, 11-ish years in the space, obviously from start up to where you are now, with hundreds of customers. So you've no doubt seen a lot of different things, success and the opposite end of that. What's some of the sort of biggest mistakes you've seen out there with either your business or learning points or other e-commerce stores, sort of some of the learnings that you've come across over the last sort of 10 years?
In our business, I think underestimating the length of time that it takes to solve a problem is a startup disease.
Yeah.
That's a startup.
Hold my hand up to that one.
All founders are optimists. They may not look like optimists. They may not behave like optimists sometimes, but at heart, they all believe it's going to work out and it's going to happen. They think, right?
Yeah.
I probably thought we could do this in 3 years, and nearly 10 years now. I mean, we've really been operational since about 2011 because we were a spin out from the e-commerce consultancy for the first couple of years. We were one coder in a corner type stuff. So at nearly 10 years, and we're only really becoming an e-commerce platform now, which is interesting. Now, what we've done is highly disruptive. What guys like, Vend have done is highly disruptive. We have genuinely collectively disrupted an industry, but we're a tiny little part of it still. The legacy industry still exists, and people forget that. We're all over in the corner, punching each other's lights out. Meanwhile, Micros and SAP are the big massive players in the industry still. Not even thinking about that. So I think, one thing was definitely the amount of time it was going to take to build a solution and to solve the problem. The problem being, I can sell anything anywhere and be in control of the fact that, I have it, that I can definitely sell it, I can drop ship it, I can do this, I can do that. It's really enabling retailers to just have visibility and right across the business.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that amount of projects and it's always worked for myself, etc., and always really work with business owners and sort of entrepreneurs. It's like
go quick. Well, the other thing then,
I'm launching a podcast.
Well, exactly right.
It takes a week.
I entertain notions of doing this. I'm glad you've done it, Richard.
I just do the easy bit. I do this bit, and then the guys do the tech bit and sort it all out. But yeah, I think it has been this 2 months of sort of 2.5 months of lockdown has given us, a lot of people that I've spoken to, that extra time to work on sort of side projects and work on that, implementing their EPOS system in your case. And, and do you know, what was that guy we spoke to, Martin, about that thing, but then it's like, things still, you have to admit when I sort of really took on board, we're going to be at home for a couple of months. It was like, right, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. We're sort of got to 1.5 of those things, sort of thing. I think that's
totally, absolutely. I mean, can I plug my little side project? I do have a football game.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I have a football game called Football Fortunes. If anyone's a football fan, check it out. Yeah. So I do have a little side hustle. And the other thing I've seen in terms of the retailer side, the constant mistake that I see is overthinking e-commerce. In terms of design is a big one, And so when we were in the consultancy, I would talk to small retailers who wanted this and this and this and this and this. And it's like, okay, all right, yeah, let me show you Craigslist. And of course, they'd never heard of Craigslist. And Craigslist to this day is still text and nothing else. Yeah. And really, and the last time I looked, it was a 4 billion turnover. So it's never needed anything beyond text. And if you look at Amazon and eBay, and this isn't to denigrate them because what they've done is genius, their design hasn't changed much in the 20 years that they're kind of hanging around, the 15, 20 years that they've been around. And the reason is it just works, And I constantly see retailers talking themselves out of selling online because they think, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that. No, it has to be just there.
They get stuck in the detail, and then months or years go by where they should be moving on to the next part of the e-commerce 100%. Rather than sort of trying to polish something that's already 90% there.
Yeah, get something out there, right? Your customers will tell you how to make it better. That's my big learning from building a tech product.
So on that line, on that sort of thread then, so the guys that are listening in that have got e-commerce stores, they're they may be at a point where they're looking to exit and really go for some expansive growth. What would be sort of one bit of advice or one strategy that you've seen consistently, maybe that would help a business go from that sort of, maybe doing, a couple of $100,000 a month to $400,000 a month? Is there sort of some very distinct patterns you're seeing with firms that are seeing some sort of hyper growth or big growth?
Yeah, it's the guys that have got on top of marketing. It would horrify me to think that our customers were coming through buying something from us and I would never know anything about them. That would horrify me. And yet that's what happens in a retail shop day and daily. So if you have a loyalty scheme in particular that's really kind of top notch and on top of things, you're in really good shape straight away, because you're getting the details that you need. You're able to talk to people. You should see about a 33% or more return on loyal customers than you would have done without loyalty.
A loyalty scheme that works online and offline, where whatever they
that's as you know, that's one black spot for loyalty at this point. And it's one of the things that we will solve, because we have both sides of the platform, So we have loyalty on the POS, but not online at this stage. But that's a sore thumb, for a lot of people.
That's on its way then, or is that a little way off?
Way. Yeah, and even customer accounts, the ability to manage your own customer account online is a bit of a black spot again as well. You won't find that in the Shopify just yet, or anything like that. And they're all bespoke things. That's something that Tesco would go and spend 20 million on implementing at this stage still.
When you've got that ability to then follow up, email those databases.
It sounds simple, Richard. Yeah. It sounds simplistic, but it's so effective. And if you can join that, and then if you're everyone's on social, for example, so the websites have taken a back seat, and that to me is somewhat of a mistake. Because what I see in small retail in particular is they've got a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a Twitter. They're managing all that stuff to some degree, but they don't have their own website, so they don't have that centralized place where people are coming to, to kind of learn about the brand. And for me, social is a feeder to an outcome. It's not an outcome in itself. You're not going to sell much by just posting.
You don't own it, do you? You don't own Facebook or the channel on Facebook, the page. You are just making a noise on someone else's platform.
Yeah, totally.
That can just be taken away from you, can't it? Whereas you've got your own site.
Yeah.
And you're building the assets. Yeah.
If you've ever been unfortunate enough to be in South by Southwest in Texas during the music festival, and you're on 8th Street and there's 16 bands playing at once, that's what social media looks like. It's like, unless you're extraordinarily good at it, it's lost in the noise. But if you do have a channel, so for me, Facebook, Instagram are all highly effective channels. If you can advertise on Facebook and drive them to your e-commerce shop successfully, for example, then remarketing as well. So it's really that full cycle of, capture, market, remarket, improve. And if you could get that feedback loop and get those details, that's going to grow your business faster than anything.
So you're going out there, but you're taking them back to your asset and then remarketing them back to your asset all the time. Yeah. So are you seeing a lot of what sort of patterns are you seeing around paid ads? Are you seeing anything around paid ads with your customers, like Google ads, Facebook ads, anything there going on in terms of sort of big investment or, big opportunity right now? There's a lot of, we're seeing, that quite a few people are sort of abandoned paid because they're, for other reasons, there maybe, something else has failed in the business and they've got to be really just hold everything in. But we're seeing a lot of discount at the moment on clicks. A lot of industries where there might be an 8 ROAS, there's more of a 20 ROAS because the demand's a lot higher. The ROAS on paid ads is like. Are you seeing patterns there with that?
No, I mean, I think it's the next war zone for our guys. In a funny way, I think small retailers are so time poor that they don't really tend to do this, and they don't go through agencies. For me, one thing I'd like to see change is agencies are out of reach of these guys a lot of the time, in terms of cost.
The retailers,
working with small retailers is not on the agenda for most agencies because the money's just not there a lot of the time. But, you could do it on a percentage of sales, for example, or something similar. It's kind of getting these guys into there is a digital divide, in my opinion there. And I think the small retailers, the owner operated maybe with a couple of staff. They're doing the basics. They're firing up a Facebook post the odd time, or
themselves, and they're doing maybe the 50%, and it's sort of working, but to then
Well,
cross
there's no
over.
strategy. Yeah, there's no strategy to it. I don't think it's measured
Yeah,
at the point, you know, and that's one thing, you know. It's and again, this is me wanting the world to look like I want, you know, the world to look like. You know, if retailers start thinking a little bit more like a tech company, you know, my business tries to measure everything. You know,
yeah,
you can't go too far, and you get into analysis paralysis, and you don't know where you are. But you know, we know our ROI, we know our
yeah,
metrics on customer acquisition, we know that stuff.
yeah,
If small retailers were more sophisticated, and the last thing then is it all feeds back to the accountants. If the accountants were more sophisticated,
yeah,
sometimes, if the accountants were saying, "I'm your trusted advisor," how are you marketing your business?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well, I'm not. Well. Here's what might happen if you did.
But I think that then comes back to just being a good business person, doesn't it? It's like it goes right back to basics of, you know, a lot of people have, you know, no disrespect to anybody, but you know, they start a business. I feel, you know, I've been there. You start a business as a, do you know what? I might try selling a few of these things. Next thing you know, you're doing £1 million a month. You know, and then you're expected to understand everything to do with, you know, VAT returns, tax returns, and you may be doing a bit yourself, but you've got a bookkeeper doing a few bits. Oh, I'm not going to pay an accountant £500 a month to do that. I could do that. Well, no, you can't do that. You can do it, but you'll cost yourself a bloody fortune. So, and I think that's the same with all the, you know, we talk about marketing, Facebook ads, AdWords, you know.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
I said, I know what's in that warehouse. We don't need an EPOS system, you know, or whatever. So it's like, it's investing in the right areas, but acknowledging when to invest and sort of holding your hand up. And, you know, as a business owner, you can wear too many hats, can't you?
Yeah, I think something measurable, you know, it's something measurable, really. So, you know, if you're saying I won't pay an accountant 500 quid a month to do that for me, well, okay, well then tell me your figure. You know, what would you pay them? Would you pay them 50 quid a month? Yeah. Why? Because it's 50 quid a month, or because it's valuable to you? Would you pay them 5 grand a month if you knew that you could turn over another 150 grand a month from doing so? Do you know? I mean, these are the questions, and it's really trying to get strategic. And I understand the struggle. You know, it's bloody difficult to become strategic. Do you know, to work on the business instead of in the business. That's the hardest thing sometimes. You know?
Well, you
And
would
we're always asking them to work on the business, not in the business.
That's it. You'd hope that I think a lot of business owners right now, with in theory, a bit more time, would hope to sort of make some more strategic decisions. I would think over the last couple of months, you know, not in all cases, but you know, they're going to have a bit more time to explore, understand, you know, certain, you know, whether it's marketing, digital solutions, softwares, accountancy, or
well, totally. And you know, I think just looking at, you know, our partners, for example, you know, we're partnered with Tide and Starling. You know, simple things like, it's not simple at all. Actually, I'm calling it simple, but it's not simple at all. You know, I know so many people who have gone to traditional banks to try to open a bank account and have been told no on opening an account, and you're like, what planet is this now? That you can't even, you know, you used to go and ask for an overdraft. Now you can't get an account.
Not even open an account to put money into.
Right. And, you know, for the bounce back loans, a lot of guys were coming through us. So that there was a lot of people coming because we had put up a business information page. And
Starling, they're doing it, aren't they? I think they're a little bit, there's about a 4 or 5 day delay, I believe, was there on Starling?
Yeah, I mean, they're doing it in 18 hours on average.
Yeah, from nothing, from like, can't do it, haven't got the technology to do it. I don't know, that's the official stance, but, and then bang, yeah, whereas the high street banks, some of them were taking 4 or 5 days to.
Oh, it was all verification stuff. And, you know, if you had any sort of, you know, they were looking for trading histories, they opened an account.
Yeah.
And, you know, Starling, you can genuinely do it in 10 minutes. Tide, you can do it in 10 minutes. You know, so you're talking 18 hours from opening a Starling account. This is from scratch.
So having 50 grand or whatever it is,
Opening an account to getting a bounce back loan within 18 hours. Now, that's the sort of world that we operate in, and that's the sort of speed that we move at. You know, that's really where I think people might take this period as a moment of pause to say, okay, guys, you know, do I really care about this business that I have? Is the first big question.
Yeah.
You know, am I going to do that out the other side of this? Yes, I am. Okay. But what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
That's the big question. Now, what's it going to look? What's the world going to look like?
Yeah.
and how does my business relate to the world?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of time for reflection and a lot of hard decisions to be made. So for the e-commerce stores listening in, like I said, we have a lot of different types of listeners, from sort of guys that are just installing Shopify for the first time, to, companies that are doing, hundreds of millions a month or a year, should I say. What would you say are some of the sort of features, things that you've seen e-commerce stores implement on their site that can help conversions and help that sort of user experience on sites to really sort of turn the dial on conversions and sales?
I think first things, kind of first principles are treat your e-commerce shop as well as you would treat your physical location.
Great.
Don't go into it with the idea that you just chuck something up there and it sits there and that's it. Oh, tick box, it's done, right?
Yeah.
It's not. It's another shop. It is genuinely another shop.
Just like you would spend, 50 grand kitting out a shop in the high street and spending weeks and months preparing and employing the right tradesmen to deliver that.
Yeah.
But a similar sort of effort into your.
Yeah, very much. If you knew that you had a quicksand pit in the middle of your retail store that all your customers are falling into, you'd get rid of it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If you've got a quicksand pit, or you don't know that you've got a quicksand pit on your e-commerce store and all your customers are falling into it, well, you know what, it ain't going to work for you. I would say, analysis is the thing, Richard. Underpinning it, and what we've learned at AirPOS, and this is very hard to do, but when you do it right, it's a real eureka moment. Build the journey that you want your customer to take before you build your website and before you build the e-commerce store. Say, what do I want these guys to do? And then build a system that assists them to do it. And to go back to what I was saying about Amazon, eBay, Craigslist, they haven't radically, overhauled design on the web or done anything spectacularly technical there. But what they have done is funnel people perfectly down the rabbit holes that they want them to go down, made it seamless. Amazon's one-click checkout, wonderful, absolutely transformative. PayPal and eBay's case, absolutely transformative.
Yeah.
So those types of things just make it easy, but also know what's not working. Be able to sit down and go, you know what, we implemented this change. We changed categorization and sales fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
Have that analysis. You don't get that in your retail store a lot of the time because you're dealing with a human being and you can't really, you can't swab test them to know their DNA later, right? But you can do that online and you can get those sorts of details. And if you have your analytics set up correctly, you're going to know that people are coming back 3 times before they buy. Well, why is that? Why is that happening?
Yeah.
You're going to know that you've got lots of dropped carts. Well, why is that happening? All that type of stuff. And I think, from the technologist side, from the solution provider side, we need to up our game too. We need to get better e-commerce that's easier to set up, with loyalty schemes integrated, with customer accounts integrated, with better payment, platforms integrated, all that type of stuff. We need to provide a lot of that too. And we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah. So on that note, what sort of trends do you see for the future of e-commerce? Obviously, you're sort of at the hub of the sort of the technology side of e-commerce. What are the newer, I think robotics is quite a hot topic at the moment in terms of sort of warehousing and integrating that into sort of pick and pack facilities and things like that. What sort of trends do you see? What is there maybe any exclusives you can give us in terms of what EPOS are looking at implementing on your roadmap over the next sort of couple of years? Or
I think click and collect's a big one. It sounds boring, but I do see it moving towards that local shopping experience.
Now is literally everything is clicking. That's for us, we're clicking and collecting halfway around the county.
It's always been one of those things that's very intriguing and very enticing. But click and collect's going to be the big one. I've always wondered why co-ops and spars and all those types of shops have never done click and collect. Why haven't they been doing that for years? Yeah. Well, now they are, and that'll be its own sea change.
It's almost like it's something that the click and collect terminology and the offer of click and collect. It's been around for a long, long time, hasn't it? But it's just not been that sexy. Or that much sort of. But it's literally everywhere. It's the new thing. It's the new buzz. I think in that locality, especially with like restaurants and takeaways that can't You can't go in and go to the counter, click and collect. Yeah, I'm going to get my pizza.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if I was a retailer, I think top of my list in terms of questions would be, how do I beat Amazon to X amount of customers? You're not beating Amazon overall. That ain't happening. No. But unless you're Walmart and you buy Shopify, which they keep trying to do, and you join it into a big platform, that might happen at some point. But it's going to take something the size of Amazon and with the resources of Amazon to even take it on head to head. So how do you beat Amazon to X amount of customers? I remember really early days in AirPOS when we were so green about investment in particular, and we were looking for investors, and of course we had shops who we had implemented e-commerce for, and there was one guy in particular, and he had a lot of money, lots and lots of money, and he owned jewelry shops. So he had done very well for himself, family had done very well for himself. We couldn't get him over the line to selling online. Every 6 months he would get interested again, he would come back around, he would poke at it a little, he would spend a couple of grand here and there. And then eventually sat down with him one day and went, okay, let's take a look at this thing, Amazon. You're aware of Amazon. Went, oh, yeah, it's a book thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So,
some bloke called Jeff.
we sat with his catalogue, right, of jewellery, and we went through the catalogue of jewellery, and we got about 5 in when he started to cry, because Amazon was selling his top sellers at less than he could buy them wholesale.
Yeah.
Now that was 12, 13 years ago. That was quite a while ago, right? So you're looking at that and you're saying, how does a small retailer, and the answer is probably within their own locality, beat Amazon to 200 customers a month, for example?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, you definitely don't do it by sitting in a shop and hoping that it happens.
Yeah.
Definitely not. That is not the answer. And more so when your competitors, who are also trying to beat Amazon and beat you at the same time, start offering click and collect.
Yeah.
And you can buy something sitting in the supermarket car park and pick it up on your way home.
Yeah.
That's a new world.
Yeah.
That's a big change. So, click and collect may not be as exciting as we thought it was 5 years ago, but this is the era when it becomes a real thing.
Yeah.
Wider e-commerce maybe follows. I think I'd always assumed the two things would happen in tandem. But I'm starting to see that it's actually
Absolutely. I think, that definite, this last couple of months go from maybe having nothing, these localized businesses going from no internet or website, or no e-com, to starting with click and collect. They will now obviously see massive, orders and, a whole revenue stream that never existed. So the natural next step is, right, how do we build the full e-commerce experience?
Totally. And this comes back to your advisors and your accountants, because your accountants, I believe that this is what my accountant would know, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be my accountant anymore. The accountant should be going, hey guys, you've turned over, let's say the COVID period went on for 6 months and you turned over 30K that you never had before, right?
Yeah.
Not that amazing, right? You sold 30K online 6 months. Okay, it could be 60K a year. They're a very small retailer. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
You're doing that at a gross margin of what?
Yeah.
That's 30K cost you X. Oh, wow.
Yeah, you've got no retail store costs and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, this 30K was better than the 300.
Yeah.
That's the difference, right? And that's where the advisors come into it, where they should be going, well, okay, this is online sales. Okay, you sold this thing at 445.
20% now in that, as opposed to 10% in the retail, or whatever.
Oh, completely. I mean, you should be looking at 70% plus gross margin on your e-commerce sales. That be a target. So, on your checklist of things I must do to win, beat Amazon to X amount of customers, get those sales at 70%.
Brilliant. So, final question, Martin, for the podcast, and we always like to end on a book recommendation.
Oh yeah, okay.
So what book would you recommend to the listeners?
I love it, and I've never finished it. So it's a challenge for me. It's a real challenge. Because it warps my mind every time I try to read it, but I learn so much. It's a book called The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, by an author called Robert Persig. And the tagline for the book is an inquiry into values, and it's absolutely fantastic. And it's really about a motorcycle trip. across America. But it's fantastic. It's just mind bending in its complexity.
Oh wow, that's one I have not heard of. So that's fantastic.
Oh, well, I warn you, right? It's a mind bender. It's an absolute mind bender. I think I've tried 3 times. I was 16. I got the closest to actually reading the thing, but I don't really think I was reading it. So yeah, I would recommend that, both from a personal perspective and a business perspective. I just think it's a wonderful piece of literature.
A lot of stuff in there. So for the guys that are listening into the podcast, what's the best way to find out more about yourself, Martin? What's the best websites to get you on?
We're at airpointofsale.com, and yeah, you'll find us there. We've got a community there. We invite interaction. We invite guys to come talk to us anytime. We're pretty open and very transparent in everything we do.
Well, thanks, Martin. It's been an absolute blast. Thanks for being on the eCommerce One podcast.
Thanks for having us, Richard.
Thank you.